going to be a fun day today because we're going to be talking to Crystal Marie. And Crystal Marie is a sage, as far as I'm concerned, a sage from a younger generation. She's passionate about us being our best self, presenting ourselves more authentic and with an intuitive approach to life. So I just want to start by saying, we all come to maybe monumental times in our life. It could be monumental birthdays, such as our 60th birthday. Some women experience an event that changes their perception of what fulfillment looks like before that at any time. So many of us, including women of multiple or multi-generations, are taking stock of our lives at the moment because of certain events that are going on in our lives. And we're contemplating what we are doing in our life and our work. For many of us, regardless of age, this is a momentous rite of passage that's powered by the choices that come up for us. So we're going to have a conversation about the different perceptions, depending on the generation, but basically we're after the same thing. It's the power of sharing our wisdom through the multi-generations. There's so much for us to learn from one another. So Crystal Marie, I just want to introduce her as a best-selling author of adult and children books, and she's also a virtual keynote speaker. Crystal Marie is first and foremost a stay-at-home mom who is currently homeschooling. So might we hear some little voices today, Crystal Marie?
Possibly.
Okay. Well, you know what? We have all learned that we all have either little voices or little furry animals at times when we're on calls.
Yes.
So by
Yes.
all means, we will not be deterred by that. We will welcome that. And
Thank you.
I think that fits in so well with your philosophy of a more authentic and intuitive approach to life, right?
Yes, it absolutely does.
So Crystal Marie inspires children to talk about authenticity, and she invites women of all ages who resonate with her philosophy of authenticity and intuitive approach to life. She's also an empath and an introvert, very much like myself, and she thrives in a more feminine lifestyle. So we'd be welcome to any comments regarding that kind of lifestyle that you might want some clarity. And I have a feeling we're going to have a few people chatting today because Crystal Marie is very conscious about reaching out to her audience. So I hope we'll see some of her audience on the chat today. Crystal Marie, please share your perception on what you call the value of slowing down and moving from doing to being and feeling.
So thank you, Patricia, for having me and for that wonderful introduction. So for me, everything that you will find that I share is because I've lived it in some way. And
Mm-hmm,
slowing down, we can slow down, but our minds can still be racing with all
mm-hmm,
the things we have to do. But slowing down and slowing down on every level takes you away from all the doing and things you have to do, all the do related thoughts and words and actions, into a space of just being. And even as I say that, I find I lean back a bit, my shoulders relax, I breathe more deeply because
okay.
there's nothing left to do. If you move into a space of just being, of slowing down, every moment expands. When
Okay.
you're running and you're going and you're rushing and you're doing, even if you see a blue jay pass, you barely recognize that bird pass because you have 50,000 things going on at the same time. If you
Mm-hmm,
can really slow down, that moment expands and you're like, oh, I haven't seen this bird in a while. You can breathe. You can say if your shoulder is hurting. A lot of us go through the days with body pains that we don't realize until we lie down in that bed. If you slow down, you can recognize that and then you can stand up and do something about it. You can stretch, you can do something else, you can sit differently. Like a lot of what we deal with that we find are problematic kind of goes away when we slow down and recognize what really needs attention in our lives.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. So do you have, that makes me think about some exercises that I've been doing recently about the slowing down.
yeah.
Have some activities throughout the day where you consciously slow down? Like, not that you schedule it, but do you find times that trigger the need to slow down?
I do. So I've moved from sitting in front of a laptop all the time to running after my little one, and that's a lot of bending down. And like you would think, like I honestly thought I would be more fit because I'm running after a little person, but it doesn't work that way. There's a lot more static position than that. And so sometimes I have to stop and breathe and think about where I am and just stop, because it's often the pain that makes us stop, which is really horrible. We should stop well before that. Or if she's having a hard time, I know she feeds off of my energy. So it makes me step back and think, okay, what am I feeling? What am I dealing with that she's picking up on?
Mm,
Now that works with children, but it can work in other situations as well.
mm-hmm,
Um, Whether people believe in the law of attraction or not, we can take stock of the fact that we're honoring our boundaries or not when we slow down enough to pay attention to who we have around us. So
mm-hmm,
whether it is that you've attracted these people into your life or that you haven't honored the boundaries that you really have in order to maintain your health and your sanity, and you just allowed other people to come into your space, just taking a look around at who's around you
mm-hmm.
helps you to recognize what that need is.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I'll just
definitely.
quickly share, like in my generation, we
Yes.
talk about adopting a new pace. Okay. So
Yes.
you're being very aware of slowing down, watching the energy. Um,
Hmm.
how we verbalize that is we adopt a new pace because we have gone through the experience of rushing and rushing can buy. I think one of the best examples is sometimes we can drive from point A to point B, and
See
we
nothing.
didn't know we passed something in between, right?
Exactly. Yes.
You know, how did I get here? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So you also talk about following your bliss, and I'll just
Hmm.
interject. Like with my generation, we talk about identifying relevant activities that feed our sources of satisfaction. So, with
Yes.
me seeing that, saying that, can you explain what you mean by following bliss?
So it is pretty much what you just said. And it is important, you're right, to acknowledge how everyone would perceive that. Because when you hear follow your bliss in the media, it sounds like this whimsical madness where
Yeah, very
you
good
drop
point.
everything and just run with the wind. And that isn't that isn't genuine bliss. That is a moment of satisfaction. So everything that I speak about speaks about the long term and what is sustainable. And that really isn't sustainable. No matter what your life is, your adrenaline can't feed that all the time. Your sense of calm can't feed that all the time. You can't just go off into the wind, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
following your bliss is really just for your generation in particular. I know my mom is a part of that generation. It is always the obligations that are first and the desires that are last. You can't even say the word desire without you see the expression on the face where it's like, oh, the guilt. But if you follow your bliss, you tend to do more and more of what is right for you. And
Hmm.
there is no moral or ethical person on this planet whose bliss is about harming others, whose bliss is about being destructive to self or other people. So when you follow your bliss, if you let the guilt go, you can really see clearly what your bliss is. And what it means is, if you follow what feels good, honestly, what feels good, not, that ice cream tasted good, but, if you eat a really good salad that has a good body to it, it feels good in your body, right? There's that difference. That's a really good way to look at what your bliss is. If you do that more and more, you'll find you'll always be going in the right places. And to the synchronicity that you speak about in your blog posts and stuff, that that follows. You find there's more and more synchronicity where you're going where you're authentically happiest,
Hmm.
right? It always comes back to that. And a big part of that is intuition, which I speak about later on
Hmm.
today.
Hmm.
To honor what you need, you first need to know what that is. Get back to your true values, get back to your true joy, and find what that is. And your intuition is a big part of that. And your intuition isn't that, oh, this makes me happy in a moment. Like I said, the ice cream versus the salad. It is
Hmm.
this is what empowers me. There's something about intuition that feels like gentle empowerment. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, but it makes you expand and take up the space you're meant to take up, and then you move forward in a state of peace. That's the way I can explain it.
Could you please repeat that about the intuition, what intuition feels like? because there was something very key that you said. If you can roll back a couple of sentences, like we
Okay.
talked about gut feeling, right? But
Yeah.
say a little more about intuition.
Yes, it really, when I speak about that gentle sense of empowerment,
Ah,
sometimes
that
we make
part was.
decisions. Yes, sometimes we make the decisions because of what the audience might feel or what other people might feel. But when it comes from inside and it's not based on anything else outside, and it is your intuition, it's not based on your fear, it's not based on something else, but just your intuition, there's a sense of peace and calm, like true empowerment, that it doesn't need to be assertive, it doesn't need to be forceful, it doesn't need anybody else to know. But it brings you peace because it is true to yourself.
Mhm.
You know?
And that's where it's authentic empowerment, which I
Yes.
made that connection when you made that
Yes.
comment. That's why I thought it was so important for that to be worded that way,
Yes.
because it's not about being selfish or doing something for ourselves. It's something inside us that tells us what is right, and
Mhm.
sometimes takes care of us because it says what is not right. But
Yes.
I loved the way you put that. So I love the way you're coming up with this very
Okay.
feminine approach
Yes.
to what intuition is.
Yes.
And I also picked up, like you mentioned about my blog, sometimes we have to cultivate these these ways of living, right? These approaches.
Yes.
It doesn't just sort of land on us, especially intuition.
Um,
Many of us
mhm.
have it, and bliss, but we don't
Mhm.
recognize it. So we
No.
need to cultivate our ability to recognize it and
Yes.
take it as an opportunity,
That
right?
is literally what it is. Yes. Taking the time to cultivate it. And it does take time, which you can only find if you choose to slow down.
Yeah.
You know?
So this follows into your perception and the connection between intuition and self-trust. Okay.
Yes.
I talk about self-trust, but you also talk about lead from within. So I want to give you the opportunity to describe that concept as well, leading from within.
Okay. It actually starts with what you said. Like we have to cultivate that intuition, that bliss, is cultivating that self trust as well. Because it's every time you have a decision to make, who are you going to lean on? Which way are you going to go? Which one are you going to trust? It
Mm,
really, it, it takes practice because, well, first of all, with intuition, if you look at the last 2 years, if you say anything about intuition now, then people come back with the science and the logic and it's okay. I understand that everything has to be provable and stuff like that for people on the outside. But intuition, I had heard the psychologist say once, he's like, your intuition is 2 million years old. Your cerebral cortex is maybe 150,000. Your
mm,
intuition is not going to be able to put into words everything that it picks up on and knows. And sometimes your cerebral cortex has to follow.
mhm.
And that takes practice because most of us that have had any kind of job understand the logic and the provability and the verifiable and the credibility factor. And so that makes us almost terrified of just stepping back and saying, I
Yes.
know I can't prove this, but I have to do it
Yeah.
this way,
Yeah.
you know?
We can prove it for ourselves, though, right? We get results over and
We do.
over that tell us, trust yourself.
Yes.
You did trust yourself, so rely on that. And
Yes.
I want to acknowledge Cami. Cam came on and said the lead from within, interesting concept. So I think
Yes.
it's a concept that we can all look into a little more deeply
Yes.
and learn ways of cultivating that. Now,
Yes.
interestingly, coming through a business background,
Yes.
to me, that's all about self-discovery. Sorry,
Yes.
all about self-responsibility,
Yes.
accountability, and self-leadership.
Yes.
So I love the way your philosophy approaches that this is still something that we can cultivate, but it comes from within.
Yes.
So yeah,
Exactly.
it's interesting how we can look at this, right?
All right.
So
Yes.
we can actually apply this to anyone, whether the person is pragmatic, logical, even to those people like people who think more spiritually around these things.
Yes.
Everyone can get it if
Yes.
they think about this a little more. Okay.
Exactly.
And Cami is saying, if you can't lead yourself, how can you lead others?
Lead others.
So
Yeah.
yeah, That's our children, right, Cami? That's
Yeah.
our people around us, even people that we work with.
Yes.
And Cami also says many leaders project their insecurities and inefficiencies into those they are leading. So,
Mm.
good point, Cami. I agree with you there. In my experience as a leader in business, and I know that Crystal Marie has seen this as well.
Mhm.
Insecurities do pop up, and it does affect our leadership. So it's good that we trust ourselves to learn more about ourselves. So,
Yes, that's true.
Crystal Marie, what do you mean by less advice and more support?
So if I were to go with from the perspective that Kami shared, if you can't lead yourself, how can you lead others? When you're seeking advice, usually it is for some kind of goal that you have or
Hmm.
some direction you want to go into. If you don't know what your values are around that, if you don't know your own why for doing that, then any advice that you get is not necessarily going to take you there. It may have worked for the person giving that advice, but how do you know it will work for you if you don't know what your values are or what your true goals are and why you have those goals? So understanding what what you need, what your direction is, what your goals are, really helps you to seek the right advice if you need it, and to acknowledge sometimes that we're leading on advisors because we don't want to be responsible for the decision. To come back to your point of self responsibility, we
Mhm.
don't want to be the ones accountable. If somebody gave us the advice, we can say, "Oh well, we got this advice from this renowned person,"
Yes, yes,
right?
very much
And
so.
so,
Very
yeah,
much so.
and
Yeah.
so really owning that, and then seeking advice when you need it, but more support if that's what you need. Because if you're leaning when you don't need to, then what you probably need is support. You need more people around you who are like, oh, on board, because
Hmm.
that's different from needing advice because you have no idea about what you're doing,
Hmm.
right? So that is.
Yeah. So I see that as the support, also having the framework or the environment in
Hmm.
which you can take input from others, not advice, but take input, and then trust yourself so it all fits together, that self trust, to be
Definitely.
able to go forward for what is best for you at
You.
that moment, right?
Yes.
And, we spoke a few moments ago about like the last couple of years. I think it's really given us a good example of advice and how much advice
Yeah.
is is presented to us, thrown
Yeah.
at us in all
Yeah.
sorts of ways, right? And
Oh
so,
yeah.
how do you make decisions? Well, you have to have that inner, and I won't call it confidence. It's the ability to trust yourself that you are doing the best for yourself in your
Exactly.
circumstances. So, I think
Exactly.
this is a great conversation.
Yes.
So let's get on to a little bit about self discovery, true
Hmm.
authenticity, self acceptance, and the deeper meaning of celebrating now.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So this is where like it really all ties together, right? You slow down enough,
Yes.
then you actually begin to hear your intuition, and your intuition sparks something within you that makes you realize that who you are right now is valuable enough. Why not discover who this is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I have come from a science background and then an MBA and then a business, and I've gotten sick and I didn't listen to my body when that happened and I kept going. And what happens in the end is, are you really like, why are you doing all of this, right? So the self-discovery in terms of understanding, celebrating now, is letting go of continuous improvement. That is something that I spent all of my time in. And even when I tried to stop and celebrate a win before starting a new project, it was impossible. I felt like I was taking time away from that other project.
I
But
see.
I think if you really look at the mental health crisis that we have today, how many of us are dealing with anxiety, how many of us are dealing with depression, if all you can see is the things you need to fix, when do you ever just celebrate where you are now?
Yes.
Even if you're living in trauma, even if you are at rock bottom, you can still pat yourself on the back and say, I'm still here. Yes, I
Hmm.
have a next step to take, but let me take a moment to just embrace where I am right now. There is something in this right now that is beautiful, and you can find that.
Yeah, and embrace right now within yourself, because
Yes,
when you were talking about that and you were saying like celebrate for yourself, yeah, quite often what we're encouraged to do is to have gratitude, and gratitude quite often is for something outside of
of
ourselves,
you. That is true.
right?
Yes, yes,
So celebrating, like slowing down, like you said, to appreciate what got you here, all the
yes.
good things, all the difficult things, and
Hmm.
celebrate that you are here right now
Yes,
before jumping into the next challenge. Now,
yes.
some challenges, such as a child come tugging on you, they
You
are
can't do
in the
anything.
moment.
Yes,
But we're talking about, you know, how you, the behaviors that you have that are consistent with your always
yes,
aligned with your values. And you
yes,
mentioned that as well, right?
yes,
So I agree with that. So, yeah, so I think that's a great description of um, how celebrating now is something that we
hmm,
do, that is our inner work
yes,
and about ourselves,
yes,
celebrating who we are,
yes,
trusting in ourselves. So I think
yes.
we're tying this up in a nice package and a
It
bow, right?
is. Thank you. Because usually you're right, celebrating now is always what we've done or achieved or performed outside. But if you come back to just being, you
Come
can
back to
celebrate
being.
just this. That is very true. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. So I'd like to ask you, what pivotal moment in your life, now you have mentioned a few, when you recognized a shift or a need to shift, but when
Yeah.
did you recognize what fulfillment looks like for you?
Hmm. I have to say it changed with, I guess, every big thing that happened in my life. But for me, becoming a stay-at-home mom, it it could seem like an easy decision, but you love your business, right? And anybody
Oh,
who's built a business, that is their baby, you
yes.
know?
Yeah.
And so for me, it felt like having to choose between the two because personally, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I could not do both well. My
Hmm.
daughter needs a lot of attention just
Hmm.
by way of who she is. And one day I was doing a consulting call and I'm looking at her sitting there trying to be patient and wait. And for me, I realized that is not where I'm supposed to be right now. There was no fulfillment in this call. It was one of my last clients, pretty toxic. They didn't even appreciate my time there. It was a lot of, sword wagging because everybody wanted to one up somebody else. And I'm just like, they they're not appreciative. And my daughter would much rather be having that time with me.
Yeah.
And they don't stay small forever. She's 5 now, and I don't know where that time went. And I have been here. So right? I can't
Yeah.
imagine for the moms who went back to work full time and, didn't have what sounds terrible, but didn't have the privilege of the pandemic to be at home with their kids to see certain phases over the past 2 years. Like it's
Mhm.
hard. I listened to my mother and it was really hard for her to miss out on a lot of these things, but it just wasn't done. It's still
Mhm.
not done. Like all of my peers in Toronto are just shaking their heads. So, what are you teaching your daughter? How is she going to know that mom's work? She'll learn, you know? And
Yeah.
so for me, this was fulfillment from within because I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of people around who support this decision. But it's that gentle empowerment is what I
Mhm.
feel having made
Mhm.
this decision. And so for me, that was that moment most recently.
Yeah. So it goes around to trusting in yourself that you're doing what's best for you
Yes,
and for your daughter, right? In that particular
exactly,
circumstance. Yeah, when she's grown, you may have another epiphany of how, work is going
exactly.
to be for you, right?
I could absolutely see that. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, Crystal Marie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and let us know how, or let our audience know how they can reach you if they want to have a further conversation about your philosophy or about your books, for example. Tell us how they can reach you.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for having me on this show as
Mhm.
well. I appreciate it. So, if you want an author's reading for the children's books, or if you'd like to have a keynote, virtual or live, You can find me on my website at crystalmariesealy.com, all one word. That's crystalmariesealy.com, or at my website, at my email, which is crystal-marie at crystalmariesealy.com.
Okay.
So
And
thank
just to
you.
let our audience know, I will spell that out in the show notes. So on YouTube and LinkedIn, that information will be there. Just I know it's quite a challenge to try and catch everyone's
Yes,
email.
yes, it's true.
But yes, you would like to be reached by email or also about your books, right?
Yes,
And I believe you are accepting paid speaking engagement as well.
I am. Yes,
On your terms,
yes,
what is good for you, right?
yes. No, exactly.
Talk about your philosophy. So yeah, we have to be
Yes,
true to that, right?
yes. Thank you. Yes.
So is there anything else that you'd like to say before we continue?
No, just that, in everything we hear, sometimes it triggers something, and then we might start following someone. Um, in everything, I always say, take what works, leave what doesn't. I'm on this journey. I'm learning. I'm sharing from my own experience,
Mhm.
and I'm sure I will learn something new that will turn that perspective into something else at a later date.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
hope that everyone is able to do that in every
yeah.
situation.
This is
Thank you
not
for
a
having me, Patricia. No,
lecture.
exactly.
I was just going to say, this is not a lecture. This is take what works for you because that's what we've been talking about. Like,
Yes,
trust yourself. What works for you? If you have
yes,
to look for a few other people to get some information from, that's the same as what we were talking about before. It's not
yes,
about
yes,
advice. It's about taking it as input, taking a look at how it works for you.
yes.
But the important thing is to have an environment and a framework so that you can implement some of the things that would be important to you. So
For
I,
you,
I think we've covered a pretty broad subject
yes,
in a few moments. And
yes,
I'm sure this is going to be an opportunity for Crystal Marie and I to come online again on podcast and talk about some other topics because I think it's so important, so important that we're learning from younger generations and that younger generations are learning from older generations. And it has
yes,
nothing to do with age. We're all sages at some point in our lives. So
yes. I believe
um,
that.
I really do appreciate that. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And Cami, thank you for your comments. That was
Thank
great.
you.
Join me each week as I interview women like Crystal Marie and other thought leaders, including men, about finding fulfillment, usually over 60. But I wanted to bring Crystal Marie on today to show that we can be looking for fulfillment at any age. Don't wait till you're 60 to start looking
Yeah,
for it,
I
right?
know.
To build your life so that you get to that. As demonstrated by our conversation today, the ability to share and receive wisdom is not bound by our age, not bound by
Yeah.
any age. If you're interested in being a guest, no matter what your age or what your gender, please reach out to me. Visit me on my website at patriciamuir.com and you will find my blog there, my weekly blog. And actually, Crystal Marie referred to one of my recent blog entries. So I'd invite you to take a look on LinkedIn and on my webpage for that.
Mhm.
Sunday mornings, my newsletter goes out to
Yeah.
hundreds of women who sit with their favorite beverage, and it's all about self care. So they read the latest insights on fulfillment in work and life. So I often refer to Crystal Marie's insights because her wisdom is critical to our self care and critical to allowing us to make the choices based on trusting ourselves and celebrating in the moment. So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much and have a wonderful day.
You too.